a lot of people are getting their news from you, not from people like me.
Yeah.
But and I mean, you've been pretty transparent about times you've messed up or whatever, and saying, right, correct you. But what responsibility do you feel you have when you are? Because I mean, sometimes you're just scrolling, right, or you're coming across stuff and you're learning stuff in real time.
Yeah.
I have the benefit of we tape stuff, we go back and research it, etc., try to get it right.
Yeah.
You're in a tough spot when it comes to consuming and also basically publishing information in real time. How much do you think about that?
All the time.
This could be Mike Lindell calling me.
It weighs on my conscience heavily.
Oh, Jackson Hinkle. Jackson Hinkle, I guess,
He's probably watching.
Yeah. Do you want to talk to him?
Not really. I have a very different policy than you do in terms of giving clout to people. As long as someone is not representative of like a broad movement and not genuinely harmful in terms of like their audience, like the size of their audience, I most likely will not take the time out to openly combat them and openly even talk about them. The reason why I don't do that is because I fear that you're giving them a larger platform.
So you think maybe what I did with the My Pillow guy was wrong?
No, because Mike Lindell, relatively harmless, all things considered, and I don't think he represents a broad constituency. And neither does Jackson Hinkle, but like he's relatively harmless in comparison to, I don't know, like an Alex Jones even. Once they reach a certain barrier and they start getting mainstream recognition, then I feel like it's misinformation that must be dealt with.
So when it comes to Hinkle, I mean, he's got whatever, 3-4 million followers.
But that doesn't mean anything.
You think that's just bullshit?
No.
Do you think I'm making a mistake telling a story about Jackson Hinkle?
Is it just a story about Jackson Hinkle?
Well, no, we're looking, I guess, more at going from the far, going from the far left to the far right.
I just don't think Jackson Hinkle is far left in general. Given his allegiances to countries that have less power than the United States of America, his overarching footprint on the world is nowhere near as damaging as someone who is willingly a participant in American imperialism. That's also the other reason why I don't really talk about him.
Right. So you watch a good bit of my stuff. Thank you very much. It's good to have somebody watching. Please keep that up. But I spend a lot of my time talking to Trump supporters, trying to understand the rabbit holes people go down, why they go down them. Obviously, on your stream, you have a bit of fun with it sometimes. I think you also refer sometimes to Trump supporters as hogs. But you must feel some empathy at times, some sympathy.
Oh yeah.
When you see how far down, whether it's QAnon or even election denialism, whatever it is, that some people genuinely are. Some people genuinely believe this stuff.
Absolutely. I abide by the principles that Michael Jamal Brooks, rest in power, good friend of mine who passed away a couple years ago, brilliant commentator. He was on the Majority Report.
Yeah.
I abide by those principles that he so perfectly and eloquently put. Be kind to individuals, but be ruthless to systems. And while I like to have my bit of fun, making jokes at the expense of people who are inherently and overtly antagonistic to people due to their inalienable traits and characteristics that they can't change about themselves, their bully behavior, I do ultimately still want to change the minds of people, and I want to change their minds. I want to make sure that they're not falling down this right-wing rabbit hole. So I do actively, as long as someone maintains genuine interest and charitability, I will always talk to them. I will meet them at their level, and I will try to explain to them how certain things are and where they might have been led astray. So I like to have a little bit of fun.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I don't necessarily fault individuals for going down this rabbit hole, because I understand that we're all, in some ways, victim to propaganda. We cannot escape propaganda. If it was something that was inescapable, it would not be a multi-billion-dollar industry. There would be no PR, there would be no marketing, right? It's obviously very effective. So I get that. And also I recognize that especially our monoculture created by neoliberalism, I think neuters certain curiosities that people might have and very effectively dismantles any kind of counter-narrative. Like, for example, I think that there's a lot of economic volatility in this country. There's a lot of instability. There's a lot of people who are suffering, right? I think Republicans take advantage of that suffering and very quickly address that anger and use that anger to their advantage. They redirect that anger to to populations who are marginalized, and they do that very effectively. Whereas I feel like liberalism has no counter to that. There's no real interest from one party to adequately go, no, you're wrong. You're angry at your boss.
Why is that? Why aren't Democrats better at doing that?
I mean, because they're beholden to the same corporate masters and same capital interests that the Republicans are beholden to. But Republicans, on the other hand, can and do often very openly admit that they're pro-business, and they repackage their opinions in a pretty solid way. They propagandize it in a really successful way. They change the narrative from, it's your boss that's fucking you over, it's your boss that's not going to give you, your honest wage, your livable wage, to it's Mexicans stealing it from you. So they have a really solid way of using liberalism, good bad narratives, and these like spiritual, anti-materialist sentiment. They have a really good way of operating within that space and redirecting people's attentions away from the actual vectors of pain, the real oppression, the real struggle.
I mean, it's been pretty interesting trying to dig into, as I've been doing this story, digging in on the far left, as I kind of said yesterday, so far left that, you're meeting with the far right.
I don't think those guys are far left.
You just think they're straight up far right?
You can't be.
You can't go that direction as well.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way, right? Like the moment that you're like hyper focused on culture war issues, you've already lost the plot.
Right.
You are no different. Like a lot of that comes from the resistance that people have towards liberalism. People hate liberals. They love saying that liberals suck. Everybody loves saying that. I say it all the time because they do to a certain degree. It is still, at the end of the day, liberalism to hyper-focus on the other side of that coin on these groups of people that are just, trying to make an honest living in the same exact way that you are.
Yeah.
It's not like trans people are magical beings that have completely overcome the need for healthcare or overcome the need to pay for rent, overcome the need to, work an honest wage or work an honest job. They have the exact same class interests that every other person has globally. You might be in Ireland, you might be in Zimbabwe, but ultimately every single person, or in the Appalachian Mountains, every single person still wants to put food on their table, a roof over their heads, and make an honest living, and have some nice things on the side, and have a little bit of autonomy and a sense of purpose in their lives. That's just like, that's globally the exact same interest that everybody has. So hyper focusing on these like minute differences, these marginal differences that people might have, whether it be their sexual choices, whether it be their lifestyle choices, is, I think, silly liberal shit. But on the other side of the liberal coin, which usually turns into fascism very quickly.
People not happy with, obviously, the system as it is, the parties as it is. Maybe I'm putting myself into an echo chamber here, but the more and more I talk to folks, it seems that the two-party system in the US might not sustain, might not be around in 50 years' time.
I think there is no real two-party system anyway. I think most governments have some kind of theoretical democracy that they try to aspire to work towards, but ultimately it always falls short. And there is always key aspects of governance that will fall in line with the bipartisan consensus. Foreign policy being an obvious one in the United States of America. So it's not necessarily a byproduct of the duopoly here, but it's more so the reality that the Democratic Party is not responsive to the needs of the people. Because the Republican Party has figured out their own method. They're actually flailing in a different direction now because they've become too successful, and they're experiencing their own problems in that sort, because now you have all these crazy people that are embedded in the party that just want increasingly more and more violence and subjugation, humiliation to their ideological enemies, LGBT, whatever, like people that they consider morally degenerate, right? But I think that it's not necessarily the duopoly failing, because ultimately it doesn't really matter. You can have a one party, you can have a single party form of governance and still be responsive to the needs of the people in a different way. You can have a duopoly like in the United States of America.
You don't think American democracy, or at least the representation people get, would be greatly enhanced by having a multi-party system?
Oh no, it would.
Because that could then apply pressure on the more centrist side of the Democratic Party, no?
It would. However, there are parliamentary systems all around the world. They still have to create coalitions, and they still also run into the same exact gridlock problems that the American duopoly runs into as well. That's the point I'm trying to make. You have to have people, you have to have genuine pressure from the public, and you have to have politicians that are responsive to the demands being made by the people, as long as they're reasonable demands. And when you don't have that, you're just basically playing a song and dance, and you keep recycling the same old harm reduction propaganda every 4 years. As the Republicans desperately campaign, not every 4 years, but every single day, up until that very moment where the election is happening, where they try to build the solid foundation and the groundwork to capture the attention of enough people and have them be invested in this false framework, whether it be like immigrants are coming to steal your jobs or whether it be immigrants are coming to steal your daughter. They're always on. They're always propagandizing these positions. Democrats don't really do that, and they basically rely on, unfortunately, the notion that like inevitably reasonable people will engage in defensive voting and will vote against the Republican Party because they've gotten completely out of control. All the while, when they do get into power, they run scared and refuse to unwind the right-wing initiatives taken by the former Republican Party that you ousted. I think Joe Biden's agenda on immigration and his change on immigration from 2020 to 2024 is a perfect demonstration of this. He ran on this, dare I say, bold, radical, anti-Trump's immigration policies, anti-border wall agenda. He was actually close to Donald Trump, much closer to Donald Trump in approval ratings on immigration than he was by the time he was forced out of the race. Why was he so much closer? Because he actually was meeting with a counter message. At the time, there was plenty of counter messaging from the media because the media was resistant to Donald Trump. Donald Trump was doing awful things like child separation as a deterrence mechanism that's like unheard of. It's Hitlerian shit, right? And the Democrats took advantage of that and they said, we are going to do things. We're going to unroll all of this stuff. And then in the first 100 days of Biden's agenda, his administration, he was going to put forward a pathway to amnesty. Like he was going to offer conditional amnesty to citizens and all of this stuff. And he didn't really do any of that. And he also now, by the end of his 4-year tenure, turned around and was pushing for a right-wing immigration bill, right? And then
you're saying there was a total capitulation here.
There was complete capitulation on two fronts. On the messaging front, which I think is really bad, and there was a capitulation on the legislative front, which is even worse because then you're normalizing the position that the Republicans have, which is that immigration is no longer about the economy, but is actually a matter of national security. It's a complete falsehood. This is not reality at all. There is no empirical basis for this opinion. This is just simply right-wing hysteria through and through. All matter evidence shows that undocumented migrants are responsible for less crime per capita than natural-born U.S. citizens. So how the fuck are Democrats just not saying that all the time? How the fuck have they not said that for the past 4 years when you knew that
they're up against these images, right, of so-called caravans.
Anecdotes, racist anecdotes.
But they haven't found a way to counter that.
They have just never countered it. That's the problem. They completely gave ground on that front. They do it all the time. They do that with the crime panic. They just let these things subside eventually. Or worse, sometimes they just take ownership over right-wing policies. Like Bill Clinton did this too in the 90s, like with the crime panic.
Jackson Hinkle really wants to talk to you.
Bro, that's precisely the reason why you don't talk to him.
So I'm gonna pick up after I chat to you, but just tell him you didn't want to chat.
No.
Sorry, you guys, I need to give our Sean and Co a break here. I might grab some coffee. So I gotta do this. He says, ask him, okay, there's 2 questions, and I'll ask you these.
Okay, why are you being a vessel for this fucking demon?
Why didn't he condemn AOC for allowing $1 billion in taxpayer funding to pass for Israel's bombing campaign on Gaza called Operation Guardian of the Walls?
I love it. I love AOC and I love Israel. That's why.
Also, how am I begging for clout if I get banned everywhere but still have way more followers than him?
Fucking own. There's obviously a lot of passionate people.
Yeah.
You know, well-intentioned, like-minded, passionate people. And there's always one fucking thing. That's all it takes.
Yeah.
One thing that they disagree with me on vehemently.
Yeah.
And they carry over that passion into that disagreement. So all of these other issues that I'm advocating for, they're also on board with as passionately.
Yes.
But then that one fucking disagreement, they'll go, oh, dude, I'm writing him off. And then they look for like other communities that they can find that same level of like comfort and security in. But now what they're seeking out is no longer the like-mindedness or the interest in progress, social justice or whatever. Now it's who will tell me that this guy actually sucks and reconfirm the suspicions that I now have developed over him. And I think like most normal people have disagreements, you know, they just move on. They're like, yeah, I like that guy. I don't agree with him entirely. I love Mehdi Hasan. There's certain things that he says that I don't agree with, but it doesn't matter. Like I think that he's overall a good guy. David Pakman, a great example. There's plenty of disagreements there, but I always think that he's a very cordial dude. Even if I do not agree with his opinions on foreign policy, I think he's a cordial, professional guy, carries himself a certain way. Human beings are imperfect, myself included. And I I care about like the intentions that people have. I care about someone's track record. I'm not going to write them off because of a major disagreement on an issue as pivotal as Gaza. I still have a lot of respect for Bernie Sanders for his long career in the Senate, advocating for social justice, advocating for healthcare, advocating for free college, all these issues that are near and dear to me, and also basically revitalizing some semblance of a leftist movement in this country.
Yeah.
As a very popular candidate. I will always have respect for him on that front. You know, it doesn't take away those other accomplishments.